Have you ever been completely shocked by the amount of sugar in the drinks at Starbucks? If you want to enjoy your favorite drinks without the carbs and the sugar, then stay tuned because today I am revealing the best low-carb Starbucks drinks. Hey everybody, Erin here with Healthy Mom Happy Family, and I am so excited to have you join me here today because if you love Starbucks drinks, this video is for you. Did you know that some of the flavored drinks at Starbucks can have as much as 80 grams or more of added sugar? I mean, that's insane. That's more than drinking 2 cans of soda. And all of that added sugar can of course have a big impact on your blood sugar levels and your health. But there is good news. There are ways to have delicious low carb and low sugar options the next time you go to Starbucks. And today I'm gonna share with you exactly how to do it. But before we dive in, I just wanna remind you that if you are looking for easy tips and tricks and recipes on managing type 2 diabetes and reversing insulin resistance, then I would love to invite you to subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss a new recipe or video. Okay, so before you head to the Starbucks drive-thru, let's talk about the best low carb coffee and tea options to order. So first, let's start with the Starbucks drinks that have 0 grams of carbohydrate. So this category, of course, includes brewed coffee, espresso, and cold brew. And I know that seems pretty simple, but things like the brewed coffee, the espresso, the cold brew, they are super simple 0 carb drink options that you can get at any size because they have nothing added to them. Now, whether you choose hot or you choose iced for both the coffee or the espresso, it's not gonna change the amount of carbohydrates or the amount of calories. But if you want another option, for instance, you want the Americano, whether it's hot or iced, and this is basically an espresso that's topped with water, or the nitro cold brew, that's another option that has 0 carbs and gives more of a velvety mouthfeel. These are all still 0 carb options that you can enjoy. Now, if you do want to flavor them or add a touch of sweetness, keep in mind that if you add syrups or you add sugar, that's gonna raise the carbs. So try to instead sweeten it with things like stevia or monk fruit or allulose, or even a sugar-free sweetener if you wanna use that. If you want to, you can use a pump of the sugar-free vanilla syrup to add some flavor, and that at Starbucks is lower in carb. And if you want to add a little splash of cream or milk, you can do that too because a splash is not going to add too many calories or carbohydrates, but keep in mind milk does contain some carbs, so watch how much you're adding. Now tea as well, if you do unsweetened hot tea or iced tea, that's also 0 carb. It's totally unsweetened, whether it's hot or cold, and any size will be calorie-free and carb-free. But if you do add sweetener, of course, that can change things. So make sure you're opting for those 0 carb sweeteners as well. Now, when you think about tea, really at Starbucks, there's a huge variety, but chai tea, the Earl Grey tea, any of those teas that they offer, they are still going to be 0 in carb, no calories. But if you do want to sweeten them, the stevia, the monk fruit, the allulose, those are your best options, just like if you were sweetening the coffee. Now, if you like a hot tea latte, ask your barista if they can add a splash of cream or a little bit of milk. That's going to give some flavor and texture, but still keep the carb count low. If you really do want the pump of the syrup, choose their sugar-free vanilla syrup. That goes really well with the black teas, and it's not going to add a significant amount of carbs or calories. But what I do want you to watch out for when it comes to teas is the iced teas, the tea lemonades, because these have a large amount of added sugar. Some of them contain added juices too, so that will increase the carbohydrate content, and you just want to be on the lookout for that so you know how it will impact your blood sugar. Okay, so let's talk about Starbucks drinks that have less than 10 grams of sugar per serving. So there's flavored coffee drinks at Starbucks that you can order, and they still have carbs, but very few, under 10. So this is going to still work for a low carb diet plan, or if you're trying to manage your blood sugar with a diabetes meal plan. But just make sure you watch the flavorings, because depending on the amount of flavorings and the choices you add, that can really drive up the carbs and the calories. So the first one I want to talk about is Cafe Misto, and the Grande Cafe Misto has exactly 10 grams of sugar. And this is because the drink is half brewed coffee and half almond milk. And you can add a sugar-free sweetener if you want, or you could put a couple pumps of the sugar-free vanilla syrup. That's not gonna add much in the way of additional carbohydrates. You could also add a little dash of cinnamon if if you want, which gives a nice flavor without adding to the carbohydrates too. Okay, so let's talk about the cappuccino, because this is a pretty classic option. It's usually made with espresso or steamed milk, and depending on the size you get, that will impact the carbohydrate level. But a tall size will give you 9 grams of carbohydrates at Starbucks, and most of that is coming from the milk that you add in with very little added sweeteners or sugars. Another option to consider is the flat white. If you order a short, it has exactly 9 grams of carbohydrate in it. It's a combination of espresso and steamed milk, so most of the carbs again are coming from the milk. Now, a macchiato is an espresso that has a small amount of milk and foam on top. And if you want to enjoy that, it has just 2 grams of carb. Now, if you love a blonde vanilla latte, make sure you order the sugar-free one. In a 12-ounce tall size, you're getting just 8 grams of carbohydrate. And the ice version, same size, is gonna have just a little bit less sugar because most of the carbs are coming from the milk. And so when you get the ice version, because there's ice in it, there's less actual milk in the cup. But make sure you're requesting that this is sugar-free, and that way your barista is gonna add the sugar-free syrup instead of the classic syrup, because that will give you a huge savings when it comes to the grams of carbs and sugar. You actually save about 20 grams of added sugar when you choose sugar-free versus the regular here. Okay, so when you go to Starbucks, I want you to understand where the carbohydrates and the sugars are coming from, because if you want to build your own drink, I want you to really know where you're getting the carbs from so you can make the best choices. Okay, because there are a few sources of carbohydrates when we think about Starbucks drinks. One of the big ones is milk. Milk contains naturally occurring sugars, but it does still contain a source of carbohydrate. And then of course there's the flavorings and the syrups, which are going to add in a large amount of added sugar. Now, when you think about milk and cream, this of course is a natural occurring source of carbohydrate from the natural sugar that it has. Now at Starbucks, you can order a variety of milk options. So there's dairy milks, there's plant-based milks, and each option is gonna have a slightly different level of carbohydrate. So if we were to look at 8 ounces of milk, this is the amount of carbohydrates you would find depending on your milk choice. So if you're doing 8 ounces of cow's milk, dairy milk, you're going to get 12 grams of carbohydrate from that milk. Remember, it also contains some fat and protein, which slows down how quickly those are digested. Soy milk is higher, it usually has 16 grams. Coconut milk has 8 grams. Almond milk is the lowest at 5 grams, and oat milk has 16 grams, and it tends to be the lowest in protein. So that one usually has the biggest impact on blood sugar. Okay, I also want you to think about what this means from a portion size, because a tall latte is gonna have about 10 ounces of milk when it's hot, or about 6 ounces when it's iced. If you go for the grande latte, you're gonna get 14 ounces of milk in a hot version, or 8 ounces when it's iced. And the venti latte, you're gonna get 18 ounces of milk and about 16 ounces of milk when it's iced. So depending on the portion size and how much milk is added, of course, that's going to have an impact on the carbohydrate content of the drink. Now, if you're wondering about creamers and half, they contain fewer carbohydrates because they can tend to be higher in fat and less of the actual milk sugar. If we look at 2 tablespoons of half, you're getting 1 gram of carb, and the same when you think about heavy cream, 1 gram of carb per tablespoon. But these would not be a great substitute for milk because they are much richer in saturated fat and calories. And if you have too much saturated fat in the diet on a regular basis, that could also increase insulin resistance. So a little bit's fine for flavoring, but don't swap out the milk for heavy cream instead, because it's gonna add a significant amount of saturated fat and calories. So let's talk about the syrups and the sweeteners, because this of course is the biggest area that the added sugar and the carbohydrates come from. And Starbucks, they really love to sweeten their drinks, like most restaurants. So for instance, if you were just to go and order an iced coffee with milk through the Starbucks app on your phone, they automatically add 4 pumps of their classic syrup. So you might not even realize that they're doing it, but they're sweetening the drink. And if you think about that, every pump has 5 grams of carb. So you're getting 20 grams of carbohydrate and 80 calories from pretty much simple sugar. That's pretty crazy, and it's gonna have a big impact on your blood sugar. So you really have to be cautious about what's being added to your drink to flavor it. Now, there are a lot of options at Starbucks, especially if you think about the flavored syrups that are there. They have seasonal ones, they have classic ones, and generally most of these syrups have 5 grams of carb per pump. Some are even a little bit higher. Like if you look at the mocha syrup, you're getting 6 grams of carb per pump. And the white mocha syrup, this one has a ton. This one actually has 11 grams of carbohydrate per pump. And of course, these carbs are basically simple sugars. That's really all that's in them. So they will immediately be digested in the body and have a direct impact on your blood sugar. So we really have to be cautious about them. Now, if you're wondering about the standard drink recipes at Starbucks and how much sweetener they add, there's usually 2 pumps of syrup in a short, 3 pumps in a tall, 4 pumps in a grande, and 5 or 6 for a venti. So that means if you're just ordering your traditional drink, you could be getting anywhere from 10 to 30 additional grams of carbohydrate from pure sugar just from the syrups alone to flavor the drink. So this is an area we really have to be cautious about. But there is good news. Starbucks does have a sugar-free vanilla syrup. So if you do want that flavoring, you can always ask to substitute the sugar-free from the others. This one has 1 gram of carb per 4 pumps. So that's a big savings, right? Because the others have about 4 carbs per 1 pump. Now, the unfortunate part is they don't have a ton of sugar-free options at Starbucks. You can get that one sometimes, depending on the location you go to. You might find sugar-free cinnamon or hazelnut, peppermint, maybe even mocha, but it's not available in all locations. So ask your barista what's available, but definitely look to cut back or to use the sugar-free options. Another thing I want you to think about is the matcha lattes, because I know a lot of people see the green color and they think, ooh, this is a healthy drink. But the problem with the one at Starbucks is they use a lot of sweetener in it. It's a sweetened powder that they use to make their drinks, and you're gonna get about 20 grams of more of sugar just from the powder that's being used. So definitely not the best option when it comes to managing blood sugar and reducing the carbohydrate content in your drink. Okay, so let's talk about how to customize your Starbucks drink to reduce the carbohydrates, but still make sure it tastes good and that you enjoy it. So as I mentioned, the carbohydrates in Starbucks drinks are coming from the milk and they're coming from the sweetener that you choose. And of course, your portion size is gonna play a big role in how many carbohydrates your beverage will contain. So if you wanna come up with your own custom low-carb Starbucks drink, first let's start talking about the milk. Now you can choose any milk option. If you're strictly thinking about carbohydrate, your best choice is actually the almond milk because it just has 5 grams of carb per cup. Now there's nothing wrong with choosing the other milk beverages like dairy milk. You're getting 12 grams of carb, but remember, you're also getting more protein there. Sometimes you're getting a little more fat, so it's gonna have less impact on blood sugar and be a bit more satisfying too. So choose what you like, but I just want you to remember that your milk choice will have a direct impact on the amount of carbohydrates in the drink. Now, of course, as you're customizing your Starbucks drink, it's really important to think about your sweetener options, especially if you're choosing the syrups. And I do encourage you to limit the syrups or to choose the sugar-free option if you want to reduce the amount of added sugars in the drink. Just keep in mind, if you do love the regular syrups, every pump has about 5 grams of carbohydrate. So your best option, if you really want the syrup, is to ask for just 1 or 2 pumps versus the 4 or 5 they typically put in, and maybe pair it with the almond milk instead of the dairy milk to cut the carbs even further. So to give you an example, if you wanted to kind of build your own low carb drink at Starbucks, let's say you wanted a cold brew drink. All right, so we could start with a base of a grande cold brew and ask for 2 pumps of a syrup that you enjoy, and then just a splash of cream or half and half. Now with this, the pump, 1 or 2, if you're using sugar-free syrup, you're only gonna add about 2 grams of carbohydrate. If you are using the regular syrups, you're gonna have about 10 grams of carb added to that drink. So in that situation, if we chose the almond milk, if we chose the sugar-free pump, we would have a drink that's under 10 grams of carbohydrate. So when it comes to Starbucks drinks, you can really build your own and have a lot of fun doing it. You can try varieties of milks, you can try varieties of the sugar-free syrup options, and really build your own and have fun with it and see what works best for you. Now, I do want to make a note about caffeine and blood sugar when we're talking about Starbucks drinks, because lowering the sugar in your favorite drink is one thing, and that's going to have a big impact on blood sugar. But I also want you to remember that caffeine can have an impact on blood sugar. And for some people with diabetes, a caffeinated beverage, even if it has no carbohydrates in it, it can still cause your blood sugar to increase. So always test your blood sugar to gauge your own individual response. And if you are somebody who is sensitive to caffeine and you know having caffeine in a beverage raises your blood sugar, then choose decaffeinated options whenever you can. Okay, so here's the bottom line on Starbucks drinks and your blood sugar. As you can see, there's a lot of Starbucks drinks that have a large amount of carbohydrate and added sugar, and these drinks, of course, can send your blood sugar soaring. But what you want to do is think about the options there that are better for blood sugar, and there are a host of options you can still order at Starbucks. You don't have to give up on it completely if you want to reduce your sugar intake and your carbohydrate intake. So just be strategic. Think about the menu before you get there. Experiment with some varieties. You can play around with different versions of milk to reduce the carbs, different versions of sweeteners, or get rid of the syrups altogether and use a variety of sugar substitutes or a little bit of cinnamon to flavor the drink in the way that you enjoy. Really, the options are limitless. Just play around with it, find a version that works for you, but you don't have to give up Starbucks to manage your blood sugar. You do just want to make smart choices. So let me know, have you found a low carb drink at Starbucks that works really well for you, that you enjoy? I would love to hear from you in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss new tips, tricks, and recipes. Thanks for joining me.